Happy Monday, New Horizon. It's Pastor Mark. Hope you're doing really well this 3-day weekend, Columbus Day weekend. And I'm sitting in Mom's backyard because we just got a flu shot. How's that sound? Here's your Sunday review, if you would. We're making a lot of noise about next weekend. It's our Friends weekend, and we're going to Fall Friends weekend. We're inviting people to Scott and Hillary's place on Saturday night. There's more information and an address on our website, and you can bring something to share and bring a friend, a lawn chair. And then Sunday is pretty special, Oktoberfest in the cafe with all kinds of fall goodies. And then we're going to have a service that's geared for our friends, and we would love for you to pray, and invite. Now, we're in these disciple shift groups, and here's a little bit of a recap so you can have conversation in your group. Please do listen to the audio for this if you'd like a little more expanded version. But we asked this question: what is the role of the Holy Spirit in making disciples? And I'm telling you, I'm just jazzed about this particular topic because the Holy Spirit is the chief disciple maker. And so what I tried to do is just very quickly run down how we might make some sense out of the squishy here with the Holy Spirit. We don't know just how to talk about the Holy Spirit all the time, but I mentioned Wesley's thing, that the Holy Spirit is that pioneering spirit that's working in us years ahead of time and wooing our hearts to Jesus. And then there's this saving grace, and the Holy Spirit is whispering to our heart, knocking on the door of our heart. When we finally open that door, Christ comes in and our sin is forgiven. And then there is this transforming grace by God's Holy Spirit, and that's working in all of us today if we're Christ followers, making us more like Jesus. So that's one way to think about the Holy Spirit. But if you run through the scriptures, Old and New Testament, there's this promise of the coming of the Holy Spirit, and God says particularly, I will put my spirit in you. I will give you a heart of flesh where you have a heart of stone, and you will know, and I will move you to obey my commandments, and everyone will know their God, from the least of them to the greatest. And this is speaking of the Holy Spirit coming into believers and connecting us with God in a very personal and intimate way. It's just a glorious thing. The Spirit of God lives in us if we are believers. And at Pentecost, that's after Christ's resurrection, the Spirit was poured out. And it was poured out on the believers, and ever since, as we receive Christ, the Holy Spirit comes and dwells in us. We say Jesus is in our heart, but Jesus is in our heart by His Holy Spirit. But there's a very interesting little word, and I want you to latch on to this. When the Holy Spirit is poured out, He says, your sons and your daughters will prophesy. Now, I think we think of prediction when we think of prophesy. The Old Testament prophets would predict what was coming. It's more than prediction. It's simply knowing the heart of God, getting on the God wavelength, dialing into His frequency, fine-tuning. It's God revealing His heart to us. There's a sense that God is loving us, but a sense of God's love for others is that we begin to become acquainted with the heart of God when we read the scriptures. There's a prophecy going on in our souls, a connection with our God, and God is revealing Himself to us with His character and with His heart for us and for other people. And as we spend time in prayer, God is revealing Himself to us. That's the spirit of prophecy. It's not simply prediction, it's connection with God, knowing the heart of God. And what does that have to do with discipleship? Well, we're disciple makers, friends. We've been called to make disciples of all nations. And when we're in conversation with friends, and when we're looking upon our world, as we have been this weekend, as we're prayerful for the peace of Jerusalem and for all that loss of life, and for God to be, please, God, be merciful in all of that. We gain the heart of God. That's prophecy. The spirit of prophecy is the heart of God. And we are compassionate. And we are drawn to those that are hurting and drawn to those that are far from God. And so when we're with friends, we're asking God, Lord, what's your heart for this person? And how can I be a part of helping this person know and grow in you? And we're listening for God's promptings and His still small voice. And perhaps there's a nudge in our heart to step into that and find out how they're doing. And perhaps even let them know, we're praying, people. Is there something that I might pray with you for? That sort of thing. That's the deal. The sons and the daughters of God will prophesy. They will know our Father's heart. Jesus said, you'll know my voice and you'll follow me. We have the mind of Christ. We're beginning to think along the lines of God. It's just really a beautiful, beautiful sentiment. It even says in the scriptures, you have need that no man teach you, because the Holy Spirit in you is giving you the heart of God. And as you read the scriptures and as you spend time in fellowship, you are discerning. It says the natural man, the natural physical brain cannot discern the things of God. They are spiritually discerned by the Spirit in us. Now, I know that's all very, very squishy, but I put that before you today because that's the role of the Holy Spirit in making disciples. He connects us with God, gets us on God's wavelength, and we begin to become more, comfortable with fellowship with God, with listening to God, with sensing God, with hearing God, and even speaking what God places in our hearts. Now, as you go to groups this week, there's a little bit of ammunition for you to discuss, and your group leaders, your disciple makers in your groups, well, they will lead you in this conversation. And I'm asking us to move from our head to our heart and talk about the squishy. How do we know the Holy Spirit's there? How does the Holy Spirit speak to us? When have we followed the promptings of the Holy Spirit? All that stuff is good stuff because what it does is it makes the Holy Spirit's work in our lives more real. And we're just far more likely to hear God's Spirit when we talk about God's Spirit with one another. It's not a strange thing. God's Spirit lives in us. And the 18 inches from our heart to our head, God can traverse that, and He can speak to our hearts and minds, friends. So I'm going to leave that with you, and I look forward to seeing you this coming weekend on Saturday for the big barn party at Scott and Hillary's, and on Sunday as we invite friends to Oktoberfest and our Fall Friends Weekend. It'll be a hoot, friends. Love you a lot, and I look forward to seeing you then. Bye-bye.